An adult film interrupts the Super Bowl, a hacker protests live on HBO, and Lilo Stitch turns into a total nightmare. These are more mysterious live TV interruptions. On April 27, 1986, HBO viewers were watching The Falcon and the Snowman when suddenly, right in the middle of the movie, the satellite signal was hijacked and a message appeared on screen. It was protesting HBO's subscription fees for home satellite dish owners. It was a pretty friendly message to anyone not working at HBO anyway, saying, "Good evening, HBO, from Captain Midnight, $12.95 a month? No way. Showtime/movie channel, beware." The interruption lasted about 4.5 minutes. Technicians at HBO tried to regain control of the feed, but the signal was strong enough that they couldn't override it. The broadcast was now out of their control. Eventually, the FBI and FCC tracked the intrusion back to a man named John R. McDougal, an electrical engineer who went by the name Captain Midnight, using equipment from his uplink station in Central Florida. He surrendered and was fined $5,000, sentenced to a year probation, and had his amateur radio license suspended for a year. This next one goes all the way back to October 27, 1968. A bizarre broadcast incident in Palm Springs, California made local headlines when the off-air signal of then new ABC affiliate KPLM TV was accidentally hijacked with some adult material. Shortly after the station had signed off and switched to its test pattern, viewers suddenly saw the racy film playing instead of the usual blank screen and bars. And it ran for a while too, about 15 minutes before the error was discovered and corrected. Turned out a 25-year-old technician named Alan Veach, who was alone in the studio that morning, had brought the videotape into the building. While he was watching it privately, somehow the playback ended up feeding into the line going to the cable company distribution center, which was live, sending the signal straight into people's homes. Police arrested Veach after the incident. He later pled guilty in federal court to violating laws against transmitting obscene material, and he was fined $500. I think the embarrassment was enough punishment alone, though. On February 1st, 2009, viewers in parts of Arizona tuning into the Super Bowl got a very unexpected surprise. During the fourth quarter of the game between the Arizona Cardinals and the Pittsburgh Steelers, the feed from NBC affiliate KVOA suddenly cut out, and for about 28 seconds, people saw explicit footage from the adult video Wild Cherries 5 instead of the game. Viewers across Tucson were stunned and horrified, watching what should have been the biggest football game of the year replaced with something, less family-friendly. At first, Comcast, which delivered the signal to local cable systems, said this looked like a deliberate hijack and promised a full investigation. KVOA launched its own investigation as well. For a while, nobody knew who was responsible, though. It wasn't until February 4th, 2011, more than 2 years later, that police arrested 38-year-old Frank Tenori Gonzalez, a former Cox Cable employee from Arizona. Gonzalez eventually pleaded guilty to 2 counts of computer tampering. He was sentenced to 3 years of probation and had to pay a $1,000 fine to the Arizona Attorney General's anti-racketeering fund. In April 2002, Venezuela was in chaos. Protests were happening all over the country, with clashes between supporters of President Hugo Chavez and the opposition. TV became a big part of the fight, with both sides trying to control what people saw. On April 12th, opposition-aligned military forces took over the state-owned channel VTV. The station went off the air, and anyone watching only saw cartoons or old movies instead of news. So the pro-Chavez side was completely cut off. At the same time, private channels were pushing the opposition. They showed anti-Chavez marches and urged the people to join the demonstrations. Pro-Chavez rallies barely got any coverage, creating a blackout for his supporters. Disruption lasted less than 2 days. Chavez supporters took back VTV and the presidential palace, regular broadcasts returned, and the president was back in power. In September 2012, a North Carolina family was watching Lilo Stitch on their TV when something completely unexpected happened. About a minute into the movie, the picture pixelated, and for around 6 minutes the movie disappeared, replaced with much more adult footage before normal programming returned. The mom, Georgie Brown, says she first heard sounds coming from the living room, that clearly did not belong in a family cartoon. And when she ran in, they were terrified, one screaming and covering his ears, another in tears. Brown had recorded the movie a few days earlier and played it back for her 3 children. They hadn't touched the remote or changed the channel. Instead, the 6 minutes of adult material appeared right in the middle of her recorded movie, between messages saying part of the program was lost due to signal issues. A Dish Network contractor who looked at Brown's receiver said he'd never seen anything like it in his 15 years in the TV business. And Dish said they were taking the incident seriously and investigating what went wrong. On March 11, 2016, people in Israel watching Big Brother on Channel 2 got a jarring surprise. For about 3.5 minutes, the broadcast was taken over by Hamas. Viewers with private satellite dishes saw images from past attacks, funeral footage, and messages in Hebrew and Arabic saying things like "learn from history and the story is not over." Not everyone was affected. Homes using regular cable or major satellite providers didn't see it. Almost at the same time, though, rockets were fired from Gaza into southern Israel, though luckily no one was hurt. The timing seemed to suggest, though, that the TV takeover and the attacks were connected. Israeli authorities quickly traced this back to Hamas, and the incident made headlines around the country. On April 20th, 2012, viewers in and around Hamilton, Ontario, watching News Now AM, were met with 3 minutes of, you guessed it, an adult film. This really seems to happen a lot, doesn't it? The station's news director said the issue happened because of a mix-up at one of the cable companies. Cable lines had been cut the night before, and while crews were repairing them that morning, the wrong programming was somehow spliced into the cable feed that carried the channel signal to subscribers. In early March 2022, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine entered its 2nd week, the collective of hackers known as Anonymous claimed that they breached a bunch of Russian state-run TV channels and streaming services and interrupted their broadcasts, with footage showing the impacts of the war. Russia 24, Channel 1, Moscow 24, and streaming platforms like Wink and Ivy were affected. Instead of the official state news feed, viewers saw clips of the conflict in Ukraine, along with messages in support of ending the war. In some of the footage, ending text claimed that ordinary Russians were against the war and urged opposition to the invasion. Anonymous had publicly declared it was in a kind of digital offensive against the Russian government after the invasion started. On the evening of April 8, 2015, something big went down at French broadcaster TV5Monde. The main TV signal, all 12 of its channels, went black while the network was celebrating the launch of a new channel. Screens went totally dark, and the station's websites and social accounts were taken over as well. Yves Bigot, the director general, later said it was the worst thing that can happen to you in television. At first, posts and messages claiming responsibility came from a group calling itself Cyber Caliphate. The broadcaster's Facebook page was defaced, and the hackers posted threats like the Cyber Caliphate continues its cyber jihad against the enemies of Islamic State. Inside the network, things were a mess. Signals stayed down for hours, staff couldn't use email, and TV5 had to broadcast only pre-recorded programs. One of the technicians on site finally isolated the infected machine by unplugging it, and the channel started coming back on early the next morning. The hackers had broken into TV5Monde systems months earlier, learned how their broadcast setups worked, and then created custom software to cripple their network. And it turned out that it was a well-known Russian hacking group known as APT28, rather than the original claim of Islamic State hackers. But why TV5 was targeted is still unclear, but the attack took TV5 offline for over 18 hours and cost millions in repairs and security upgrades. On the evening of July 29, 2025, something weird happened during a live broadcast from Brazilian channel Record News on YouTube. The live feed abruptly stopped showing the news and was replaced with a low-resolution video full of distorted visuals and odd noises, along with cryptic messages and phrases like, "You will see such pretty things. Why do you hate? And you are ill." It looked like some sort of mind control message you'd see in a movie. The interruption lasted about 3 minutes. Record News confirmed the issue only affected the YouTube stream. The regular TV broadcast and pay TV signals were not impacted here, but those phrases were the same lines found in a well-known internet creepypasta called the Wyoming Incident. a creepy fictional broadcast intrusion that's been circulating online since at least 2006. That has been the video for today. I will catch you, yes you specifically, next time.